Most entrepreneurs, tend to be more visionary than they are maybe process oriented. And we realized, hey, I don't know as much about cash flow as I need to. Our theory was more clients equals better life for us. We realized that you can make $1 million, but if you spend 999,000 of it, you don't have anything to play with, you don't have anything to take home. We just kind of realized, like, just doing the math, like, this isn't going to be sustainable. We've got to make some changes. If you're getting into a business and you want it to be about providing financial stability for you, don't worry about what you're passionate about. Just solve the problems of the people you're talking to.
Welcome to another episode of Founders Growth. My name is John Hill, aka Small Mountain. I'm the founder of Adapted Growth. And today on the show, we have Will Boyd, who's the co-founder of CEO Finance Academy. We've known each other for a while and been kind of, digital networking friends. And whenever I was looking for people to come onto here, we had a call and got really deep. And I'm excited to have him on here because I think his story is really cool. And Will, can you take over from there just a little bit and kind of give more substance to like what CEO Finance Academy is and kind of who you help?
Yeah, absolutely. First off, thanks for having me on the show, John. I really appreciate it. And I co-founded CEO Finance Academy. We do financial coaching and fractional CFO services for small business owners, usually in the $500,000 a year range up to about 25 million a year range, and really help them get dialed in, understanding their profit margins, how to make better decisions financially, and kind of where their bookkeeper and accountant tend to sort of stop with things. We take over and help make those forward-facing decisions, and training owners to actually think like a CFO rather than sometimes the visionaries that a lot of them are, and getting into the weeds of their finances. So that's what we do.
Yeah, okay, I love that, right? So the idea that the visionary might be are they normally kind of just like glossing over financing, or is it one of those things to where it's like when we grow up, we'll start paying attention to it? Is like, how does that show up for you whenever you're like first engaging with someone about your brand?
Yeah, so it's I'd say very common. I think the entrepreneurial brain, right, is for, again, I'm going to generalize, but most entrepreneurs, tend to be more visionary than they are maybe process oriented, in the sense of they're the ones who are going to take the risk. They're the ones who are willing to hear the no's. And so in this case, we lived this experience. We originally owned a marketing agency. We were physical therapists, and we created a side hustle doing
Mm,
marketing for a couple of physical therapy practices on the side. That took off and grew, and we were really great at marketing. We figured out how to sell, and then we had a good service, and all of that was going great until we tried to expand beyond ourselves, and we had to start bringing on team, hire more resources, and all of a sudden our profit margins were kind of withering away, and we realized, hey, I don't know as much about cash flow as I need to. I knew how to manage things when things were just great. Overhead was minimal. There was nothing there really, and profit margins were high. But hey, as we're adding in all this complexity, where's the cash flow at? Where is the cash? And we're hitting record months of revenue and paying ourselves the least in owner take-home pay we ever had. And for a few months, we just said, hey, that's
mm,
the cost of scaling. And then we started to say, well, we can't do this forever. And so a lot of owners, clients that come to us, they're in this place where they've figured out some level of marketing and sales and product market fit. And now kind of they're realizing, hey, the next level for me to get to where I want to go, like, I have to understand these financial pieces that I just never sat down and got trained on. And a lot of people just assume their accountant or bookkeeper will do that. And really, most accountants and bookkeepers focus on the compliance work, and not sort of
mhm.
hey, let's get in there and talk about the strategy of how we're going to grow the business to hit where you want to hit. So that's where we come in. And that's
That's
just sort of
interesting.
it's a really common journey that we just see a lot of owners go through.
Yeah. Um, was it like I'm always very curious about these moments of awareness, right? Like when the glass is tapped and we see that there's a problem, we see there's a gap, we see there's a challenge, right? I like was it How long were you doing the, well, this is just the cost of growing kind of
Mm.
thing before you decided to like, try to get some help, try to figure it out?
Yeah, I mean, it was probably a good 4 to 5 month period where we were still continuing to grow, and we had built reserves so we could ride it out a little bit longer than maybe if we hadn't built up some reserves.
Mhm.
But just sort of going through that period and recognizing, like, our theory was more clients equals better life for us, right? More clients, more revenue
Yeah.
equals better life for us as the owner. And we realized that you can make $1 million, but if you spend 999,000 of it, you don't have anything to play with. You don't have anything to take home. And, looking back, of course, that makes a ton of sense. But when you have these opportunities in front of you to make the sale, to get these bigger contracts, you just you're like, yes, that sounds great. And, we were saying revenue targets versus profit targets. And so
Yeah.
that lasted for 4 to 5 months. And then, we just kind of realized, like, just doing the math, like, this isn't going to be sustainable. We've got to
Mhm.
make some changes. And so we had to make a decision to essentially stop taking new clients, because that theory was going in inverse. More clients was equaling worse life for us.
Yeah.
And so we said, hey, we can keep our existing clients, but make sure we take care of them. But this whole idea of just like keep scaling for scaling's sake wasn't working in the way that we wanted. And so it was a period of time. It wasn't like a day when we looked at the numbers and it was like, today's the day we got to change. It was a slow process
Mm.
of sort of seeing those margins wither away and realizing like, hey, something's amiss here. And so that led us into diving into which of our service lines are actually profitable, how profitable. What's it costing us to even acquire a customer for each of these service lines? What's the difference there between our cost to acquire them versus our LTV, and all this stuff that I hear Alex Hormozy talk about a lot now, that
Oh, yeah.
isn't the sexiest, but once you get into it, you start to sort of realize, oof, yeah, that those at the end of the day, like me being able to pay myself or the team really comes down to what's available, what's left over on the table, assuming you're not operating off of like investor funds or anything like that.
Exactly. Yeah. In my work, we have to talk about like the time it takes to like earn trust and to get to the right meetings and stuff like that, because you can spend a lot of time chasing opportunities, and it becomes very easy to just go task your team with chasing down opportunities without really understanding the time it takes for the projects to close, you know?
Yeah.
So from that moment, I'm curious, like, did you just kind of dive into this and you found like a lane of greatness, like a lane of excitement? Like, did you just get so passionate about it that you decided to kind of pivot and go in this direction?
Me personally, not at all. If you'd told me 10 years ago I would be doing anything finance related, I probably would have laughed and fallen out of my chair. Luckily, no, I have a great business partner, Alex Engar. He's one of my co-founder, and he really needed to, it stemmed out of a need, which was he was married, had two little girls at the time, under the age of like 6. And so
Uh,
he needed financial security, and I needed financial security. I had $150,000 of student loan debt from going to physical therapy school and getting a degree. But his was like day to day of like, hey, this really needs to, like, we got to make this work. Otherwise my wife's going to say like, you need to go back and get a job. And so, we were looking at it, and he just took control of it and started to really look at the numbers, start to make projections, understand it. And he went down a path as well as his personal finances at the same time. It's kind of interesting how often someone's business finances are out of whack. It's not too uncommon. Their personal finances tend to be a little bit,
yep.
we'll just say, the house isn't as clean on that side either.
Mhm.
And so he went down a journey, and over 6 months really went to town on taking control of things, taking control of understanding our expenses, where are we bloated, what can we actually afford to spend on marketing efforts and things like that. And so, really out of a need, Alex will look back and say he was always a finance math person, but I think really in this, uh, going to the next level came from out of a need and really a sense of wanting to take control over things. And I think finances for so many people is a thing that just makes us feel out of control, like so many other
Yeah.
things can be in life. But just because it's the opportunity, it's the currency we use for opportunity, right? Like, can I do this thing? Can I not do this thing? I need this tool. And so, even when we started going down that path, there was no intention of we're going to start a business out of it. It was really to solve our own problem,
Huh.
because we just couldn't keep like, we saw the writing on the wall. There's no way the business could keep going if we weren't
Yeah.
profitable. And so it became really a puzzle to figure out. And I can go into it, but that experience led us to opening up, really having to get honest with ourselves. We started to be transparent with our clients about why we had to adjust pricing. And, it led to conversations of like, well, why? And we would just break down in the math of like, well, here's where we're at. And they're like, wow, I've never really, we had these physical therapy practices that were doing 500,000, 1 million, 4 million a year, going, I've never really even thought about my pricing like that. Like, how did you guys do that? And that led to these sidebar conversations of, talking to them about their finances. And that
Mhm.
slowly started into sort of some one-off consulting stuff of just, hey, let's walk you through the tools we've built, what we've been doing on our side to keep it in-house or to manage it in-house. And that just led to these kind of small conversations into bigger asks of, hey, could you sit down with us for a couple months and help us get things in order? And that's kind of the journey. And over time, that led to us having to make a decision. We were getting enough people asking for help with that compared to our agency, which had kind of been winding down a bit as we were making the changes. We had to let a lot of
Mhm.
clients go to become more profitable. And we had a moment that this, we really did have I won't say it was like one moment, but we had like a week period where um, Alex and I sat down and we're just like, we can't do both. Like, I guess we could. Neither one's going to go really well. Which one do you
Yeah.
want to do? And Alex is like, I just love meeting and talking with people about their finances. And he's like, what do you love doing? I was like, I just love sitting and running ad campaigns and not talking to clients every day. Like, oh, it makes sense. He's like, well, let's do this. Why don't we go in on the financial stuff? You run the marketing and sales side, and then I'll do the delivery. And that's really where it came from.
Oh man, thank you for the story, right? Like
Yeah.
I love pivots, I love changes. I don't think that anybody is really served by trying to be static and fixed and stuff. So I think and I appreciate the journey. When I can imagine having that conversation with your co-founder, right? And he's like, "Well, I like this," and you're like, "I like the ads, I like the marketing, I like not talking to customers." And then you end up as the sales and marketing co-founder, right? And we talked a little bit about your path of, you know, sales training, coaching, improvement, and stuff like that. Were you how do I frame this without leading the witness? Were, were you thinking about sales and marketing together as your role when you guys were talking about this? Or were you kinda thinking like, "I'm just gonna be here on the marketing side and doing the growth, and then maybe the sales showed up later?"
Yeah, great question. And it's kind of blended in the sense that as we were making that shift, I didn't know enough on the subject matter expertise side to do like a true consultative sale on that
Mhm,
aspect. And so this is really interesting where we're figuring our first version of the sales process. It's transformed over time, which was I had to say to Alex, hey, I can set these calls. I can get to the pain points. I can get into understanding. I can do discovery. When we're going to go into presentation, I, I don't really know what we're doing. Like obviously I know from us for our company, but Alex was
yeah,
developing sort of the curriculum and the program as we were going. And so it made sense that he took the formal sales call. So we would do a 2 call process. We still do a 2 call process where I would go through discovery. I'd understand what the situation is, make sure it's a fit, at least in
mhm,
terms of we actually might be able to help. And then Alex would go through and be able to go a little bit deeper. And then because of his subject matter expertise, could actually isolate deeper problems and maybe even
yeah,
secondary and third, tertiary consequences that were going to happen. And so that's
mhm,
how it started. Then I watched enough of those with Alex. I started to pick up, okay, here's what Alex is doing. I knew I couldn't do it at the level of depth of, going into those secondary and third order consequences of things, but I could do enough. And so I started to jump in and take them as Alex was getting busier with delivery and not having as much time to get on sales calls. And then
mhm,
we started to realize that, so I always thought of marketing and sales together. I never thought of them as separate. Like it's
hmm,
one
okay.
congruent messaging, right? For us, at least, it's like,
Oh,
hey, what's the message that
that's
goes?
how it that's how it's supposed to be, Will, but there's a lot of people that would rather just pit sales against marketing because they want, you know, attribution. They wanna know who's winning and who's losing, and sometimes it's not intentional. Some people do it intentionally, but a lot of people end up with a bad fight for land, right, between
Yeah.
sales and marketing, so
Yeah, and I think
fascinating.
maybe coming from a marketing agency, like we were running a marketing agency and we had to attract clients and we did the sales calls for ourselves. Like we were always
Mhm,
just like for us, it was always one stream. It wasn't like
mhm,
I do sales and you do marketing. Like before that,
yeah,
it was all just us anyways doing everything. And yeah, it's just sort of continued that way where we now have an actual sales team, but the marketing, I meet with our sales team every day at our huddle. We have a sales huddle every day. On the
yep,
marketing team, I'm there every day. They give me feedback. Hey, what are you guys seeing? And so, sorry, long way of answering that. Yes, we view it definitely as one continuous like team effort on that front.
interesting. I'm changing topics just a little bit because one of the things that I'm always very curious about is this concept that I have of like overlap, right? And where things from other parts of our life show up and help us here. So I'm curious, right? I know you're not, in the med field anymore and everything, but I'm curious, do you pull anything from that lane, from that time that helps you now as a co-founder in the business?
Yeah. I think it's been so interesting to see how it's showed up in running let's say a financial company,
Mhm,
business that we run. So a few things as a founder, I find it really interesting. I know this is probably based on who we are as personality type, but we're very conscientious of who we hire. And the reason is like as a physical therapist for my time in the sort of the medical space, you spend so much time with patients
mhm,
and you have to take on so much of their emotions during that
mhm,
time period. It's like sales. I mean, sales is emotionally, I mean, I know for different personality types, it can be different, but like most people I know, like even the people who are really like up for sales calls, you're still drained by the end of the day if you're doing a really good job. Like you're taking on emotion.
mhm.
And so one of the ways it showed up for us is like, hey, I need to find people who can take on who can also bear that load of taking on someone's emotions. So we look for that through our coaches, through our salespeople. Hey, can you sit there and handle someone's emotions? I'm not asking you to control their emotions, but like, can you sit there and be with them and not feel like it's going to impact the rest of your day? Obviously, there are things that happen that can, but
Yeah.
most of the time, can we just sit with that, be sort of an observer rather than like, hey, I'm going to get, yeah, I'm going to essentially, my day's going to be affected by, what this person says, and easier said than done. Obviously, I think everyone here would, anyone listening will feel that, but yeah, that's been a big one. I think that's been that, and then how it's played out in a financial company for us is, from my experience, most people that are in the financial field are more analytical, logical,
Mhm.
less interested in feelings about things and more like, what does the data say? And don't get
Yeah.
me wrong, we're very much that way. But in this, we're having to make like money in itself is emotional for most people. Like whether they feel like they have the data or not, it's still
Yeah.
like, oh, anytime. And think any of us, if you have, let's just say $50,000 and you got to make a decision what you're going to do with it, you feel something, you're like, either like, yes, this is exciting, or like, oh, it's a lot of money and it comes with
Mhm.
work so hard for this, or like, all these different things. And so being able to think like that, attract people like that who, I mean, it speaks to just I think our retention speaks a lot to that we've got those people who sit and can actually be there. So I would say that's been the biggest overlap. It's also played into our sales process that we're not like, um, I like to think well, it's not a better or worse, but we don't approach it from the like high ticket crush objections
Yeah.
over and over
Close them
again,
all
close them all kind
type.
of mentality. Like if
Mhm.
they're a fit, obviously we'll challenge them if they need to be challenged, but it's much more about like, hey, we're here to be be a sounding board, an advisor, and a trusted guide more than we are like a, hey, let me help you overcome every single limiting belief in your life to make this decision on a one call process, and there's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with it. And I've been on the other side of those and some of them have been great.
Yep.
I just think that's where the overlap probably comes in for us.
Well, so zeroing in on that a little bit, right? Like I would imagine my first field sales boss was also a chiropractor, right?
Hmm.
And I met him in Kung Fu. We were training together and everything. And so he
Yeah.
gave me the opportunity to go sell, pedicle screws to surgeons and everything. And so we talked a lot about the medical space and everything. And one of the things that he always talked about was like the disdain of chiropractors, right? And how everyone is up in arms about them and they're all kind of viewed as like grifters and everything. And I was kind of like, okay, well, that's odd because, you've adjusted me and it's just been helpful. And he was like, well, you take action. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? And so I think there's something to that kind of avoidance and reluctance that I think that you experience as a salesperson because people will tell you that they're very interested, but they're not. But I would imagine that in occupational therapy and everything, like you have to deal with that as a lot, like, oh, I'm going to do this rehab. I really want to be better, but they can't bring themselves to do it and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's even I would say it depends on how someone comes through, but it's a really interesting sale in the sense of, so let's just take a normal um, chiropractor or physical therapist, and if they're insurance based, like so, a lot of us are familiar with the
Hmm.
U.S.
Oh yeah.
system. You get insurance, you go in, and they say, "Hey, your insurance will cover this." technically there's not a financial sale being made on that front from a, like, you're not to help someone see the value of it necessarily. I get that there's conversation, but in general, it's not someone going, hey, and that's going to be, $2,000 today. It's someone who's going, yeah, here's my card. So where the sale comes in is for this person to get better, they have to show up and they have to do the work outside of what you do.
Yeah. Behavioral
So the
change.
sale is different. It's much more of a behavioral change sale over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I would argue, to me, it was probably the most difficult sale. Now it's interesting because no one views it as sales. No one views it as like, no one's going to go,
Mhm.
oh, this is the
Oh,
sales
yeah.
process. But you're selling over and over. If you want someone to actually get better, it's really interesting. Like you have to get them excited about it. You have to get them to see that this isn't I'm just going to quick adjust your back and you're going to be good forever. Like, hey, this is going to be a 8 to 12 week, maybe even a couple month process. And
Mhm.
I've got to get you committed. You got to drive here. You got to take time out of your
Yeah.
day. You might have to ask for work to get out of this. You have to go do something you
Mhm.
don't want to do, which is exercise sometimes. So it was I mean, it's interesting because a lot of people in the healthcare feel like I could never do sales. I'm not a salesperson.
Oh,
And I
I
always
know
just
all
think,
those
man, you're
people.
selling every day. You're selling every day, just in a different format.
Mhm. And, like, after working in that space and seeing the nurses and the doctors that were all jaded and everything, and they're kinda doing this front, and then as soon as the patient leaves, like, they're gonna be back, they're not gonna do, and so, like, they're not even really bought into the thing, right? They're all jaded and kinda, like, not happy to be there and just, just kinda going through the motions and stuff like that, and, when you're faced with that stuff, right, like, there's a good reason why lots of salespeople have got skepticism, right? And a little bit of like, a little too abrasive because they've had so many people and they just can't afford to waste that kind of time anymore, right? Fascinating stuff. Thank you for sharing that, man. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah, yeah.
One of the things we were kind of, talking about, and I thought this was really interesting. You said this line that I think a lot of people would, on the surface, really appreciate, but I think they might struggle with owning that in their days inside of how they're building their business. And you said, uh, be willing to hire people that are way smarter than you, right? Don't let your ego get in the way of hiring people that are better than you. And I was floored when you said that because I was like, "Oh, that's great." And then I was thinking about it and I was like, I think most people would hear that line and be like, "Yes, that makes sense." But they might not actually act with that intention whenever they're doing their hiring, they're doing their growth and everything. So, I'm curious, how does that show up for you? Like how have you gotten better in hiring and making sure that you're bringing on the right people to your team so that way you are bringing in smarter people in the places that they need to be smarter and things like that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think first has been just sort of reflecting back on being in teams where you have really brilliant people and sort of seeing like, wow, I've just thought of roles I've had in my life, whether it's physical therapist or working somewhere else,
Mhm.
and just seeing someone who's like, you are so brilliant, and then seeing how they're restricted by the bureaucracy or the hierarchy of the team that they're in. And
Yeah.
so it's like, hey, like where did that fall short? And it's a leadership issue of not creating space for that person to flourish.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think in the beginning it was really difficult in the sense of bringing on someone who I was like, wow, they might be really smarter than me. They might leave. They might go and take our clients because they're so much smarter, and our clients will think they're so much smarter, and they want to go through that. And so there's been a couple things that have been really, I think, helpful for us. And saying all this, I'm by no means perfect at this, and great. I still
I mean,
struggle.
hiring's tough.
Yeah,
Uh, like,
and just
uh,
your ego of like, wanting to be the smartest person sometimes. Like that's just a
well,
natural.
it's so funny because we were talking about books and everything else like this, right? In the E-Myth is a very popular book for anyone who's on an entrepreneurial path and everything. And the place that I got to with it is, I would imagine it's more like the E-Myth and less of like, oh, this person seems too smart, right? I would imagine it's more like, well, we have our way of doing it, and this way sounds a little too much like your way of doing it. Like, does that show up for you? Does that like resonate the right way?
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely not like, oh, your IQ is so high and therefore we can't. Yeah, it's definitely like so it brings up a good point and something we could discuss, which is like, are we even optimizing for what kind of smart we're looking for, right? So instead of just
Oh,
like general intelligence, like, hey, for example, when making a sales manager hire, for example, it's like,
hmm
hey, can this person do the role, but also can they lead people? Can they sit with people? And that's a really complex thing, and like being able to look for recognizing in myself that I was struggling. So like before I found our head of sales, Kyle Kraft, I was looking at like, where do I struggle with this? Right. So like
Hmm.
I could close okay. It's not my like natural strength. It's not something that I was like, I'm the salesperson. I never really viewed myself that. I've always seen myself as a marketing person, but I was taking on this role of the sales team. And so we brought on people and I realized, man, I don't have the next level of skill set to like train people on what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. It works for me. There's a little bit of charisma and charm, and I'm the co-founder. So there's like,
Oh
I
yeah,
get away
that's a
with
thing.
things that like, it's not a process I can just hand to someone and go, repeat all of this and be
Yeah.
like, well, that's not true for me. And like, oh yeah. Okay. And so realizing like I need to bring in someone who was way smarter than me in terms of experience of running actual sales teams and sales scripting, or at least frameworks that could be done by anybody who wasn't a founder or co-founder. And so
Yeah.
I realized I struggled there because I would lean on stories that were personal to me in my sales
Hmm.
process. I would lean on experience that I'd lived, and I could be able to do that. But when we bring on someone else, and I'd be like, you should just tell your stories. Like, I don't have that story. And I know it's
Yeah.
obvious, but it's like, oh, well, you'll have a version of this. And so,
Hmm.
um, anyways, long story short, I think one of the things is like, what kind of intelligence are you looking for? Right. And so in our
Yeah.
company, we look for a lot of emotional intelligence. And by that, I mean like our sales manager, Kyle, or head of sales, he is so much smarter, and experienced. And I think being smart oftentimes corresponds with experience. Doesn't have to, but it can be a big role in it. He's really experienced. He's been in a lot of sales teams, and he can sit there and he can relate to the sales team's issues or problems and be able to sit with those. But he's also owned his own business before, and so he can come and say, "Hey, I can imagine what you guys are seeing on the owner side, but I also understand like here's where they're at with this." And so being able to sort through that and say like he could easily go start his own thing and take all of our sales team because they love Kyle, right? It's Kyle or our one other closer. But just like, hey, I want to create a world where he can do what he wants to do. And he's this
Yeah.
essential part of the team, but also put some guardrails of just like, here's as far as we can go in terms of whether that's budget or, capacity that we have, but say like, hey, within that, like, I trust you and your framework. Now I'm there frequently, which is
Hmm.
allows me to have safety. Now I'm at a point where he could just do his thing for the next
Yeah.
year and I wouldn't have to worry about it. But that initial part. So long-winded way of saying like, I think the first thing is like when we say smart, it's probably more like what's needed in that role and how much more advanced or skilled are they in that, not always the technical side of the role, but
Hmm.
the everything else around it, the intangible side of that role too, of like, can they carry the emotional intelligence that you're looking for? Can they hold presence with people that the way that you want? And do they uphold your values as well? Like
Yeah.
that's obviously a non-negotiable for us.
When you were, this is potentially an odd question. Sometimes I talk with people and they kind of have this view that, and we kind of touched on this a second ago, right? Like the doctors and nurses don't think that they're selling, but they are trying to get people to change their thoughts and actions and everything. Were you nervous about bringing in a salesperson because sometimes it feels like it's going to be salesy and pressury and things like that? Were you concerned about that, or was it had you had enough experience to kind of see that there's levels to sales and there's kind of different ways of doing it? Like, was there resistance to the idea that we might need a sales or like a head of sales, a sales trainer, someone who can train around this stuff and coach?
Yeah, I think yes, we originally hired our first sales guy, and this is a really interesting experience. And for other founders or if you're in sales, you might relate to this too. Um, we brought on our very first sales hire was he's going to play a hybrid setter closer role because that's how the process had been 2 call process. I would go to Alex, but he was going to do both. And what was interesting is we obviously sell digitally. So we run Facebook and Instagram ads. People fill out a form and they book a
Mhm.
call. But the guy that we hired was a friend we'd known from a different online community, and he had a ton of 20 years of sales experience, but it was in
Mhm.
door-to-door sales experience. And me being
Mm.
naive assumed it doesn't matter. Like you're coming from one, like it's sales, you're coming from this process. And I watched that unfold and it was a really painful journey, I think, for both parties. Like this guy's
Yeah.
amazing. He's an amazing sales guy. Like, but watching him try to go into this new process and us being like, well, we know this new, like, we know the process. And coming from the door to door world where it's a lot faster, it's a lot more, well, at least in what he was selling, it's like pattern interrupt, it's quick,
Yep.
let's get to this. Like, and really what he was selling was sort of deal based. Hey, can we get you a deal on this? And
Yeah.
we're selling more of a
Commodity.
consultative, like, hey, let's project into the future. What's going to happen? So it's really painful. And I just thought, well, if he can just do the script, that will work. And I realized over time was like, I don't know how to, this was the wake up was like, I don't know how to train this person.
Yeah.
He's amazing at what he does. It's not a like, is he not talented? It's not the question. Was reliable, consistent. It was he 20 years in a certain way of selling and then moving to this style, which was different. I was like, I don't know that I know how to do this. And so rather
Mm.
than me saying it's his fault and you got to do it, which don't get me wrong, I had moments in my head where you're
Oh,
naturally,
yeah, absolutely. If it's not going according to plan, yeah,
yeah, and
absolutely.
you look for someone to blame
Mhm.
originally, and then you're like, okay, well, who's really at fault? It's me. I need to take ownership of this.
Yeah, 100%.
And I said, hey, I don't know how to do this, and we can't bring on somebody else until I know how to like do this. And in this process, we met who's our head of sales now, Kyle, and I was like, oh, I I I don't think I have the skill set to do this, and I don't even like playing this role. I need to find somebody who, which in that process of finding someone like Kyle, he was helping to train me. I paid
Mhm.
originally for him to train me as a consultant. And I started to realize like, I need to find someone like you who's really great at this because at the end of the day, I can hire more salespeople or closers, but I don't know how to train them and nurture them and guide them like you do. And
Mhm.
the amount of time it's going to take me to get up to that speed when I'd never been on a sales team before other than our own company. And I found this
Yeah.
to be really interesting is when I'd never played the role of salesperson. So Kyle came in and showed me what standards look like. I didn't even know what
Mm,
standards look like, right?
yeah.
I didn't clean up a pipeline every day. I wasn't I wasn't taking notes diligently.
Yep.
It was me. There was no oversight. So I could just do whatever I wanted. And then I watched Kyle and he was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I was like, "I don't know, it's working." And he's like, "This is no salesperson would come in here and succeed." And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you don't have a standard process. We had an existing process. It's not like someone was just like, here you go, winging it. But you know
Yeah.
what I mean? It wasn't like dialed in. It wasn't like, start of day process, end of day closeout process.
Mhm.
And he was like, your like script process doesn't make like this guy's trying to repeat what you're saying and he's not you and it's different. And so after that, I wasn't hesitant at all. I mean, it just opened my eyes of like, cool. There's a huge gap here. What was exciting was it was working okay enough, good enough with me being terrible that I got excited. Like if we could find somebody who's great or a team that's great at this, then, there's a lot of potential here. And so that's where just getting excited about someone who's smarter than you and realizing that, there's the initial feeling of like, I'm not enough. And then just
Yeah.
having talks with my business partner, he's like, hey, like this is this guy's zone of genius. Like we need to find someone. This is their zone of genius. This is what they like. And so after that, obviously there's the financial piece of making it work. But
Mhm.
after that, it was like, okay, we need something like this. And normally I would say I need to figure it out and train them. Luckily we built enough reserves. We could take the leap to find a sales manager who, as we were bringing on closers, so we could do that together. It
Mhm.
started out as like fractional sales manager. And then I still think one of the best sales I've ever made in the company is I sold Kyle on our team to join us full time. And so
I
um,
love that.
that was the process of how that worked. He got to see our culture, how we operate. And I think he was like, cool, there's a big enough space for me to do what I want to do.
Uh, Thank you for touching on the main point there, right? Because it's a thing that I run into all the time, right? Like I started out selling in retail kind of by accident, right? I just didn't want to wait tables anymore. So I got a job as a customer service rep, and then three salespeople left and like, you want to be in sales? And I was like, no, I do not want to be in sales. And they're like, well, we're short, so we're going to move you to sales. And then I got pretty good in the retail environment, right? And then I took a leap to a field sales role, which is categorically different, you
Yeah.
know, and I
Yeah.
struggled, right? And then from there, I moved into this kind of more entrepreneurial, super small business, selling on value and alignment and expectations and differentiation. And each one of those things was essentially like starting over, right? Like
Bet.
choosing to humble yourself, choosing to go figure it out in the new way, as opposed to like coming in with a bunch of ego. And what's so unfortunate, right, is that a lot of people, when they're looking to hire salespeople, they're looking for that vibe. They're looking for that fire in the eyes, and are you going to be urgent and everything else like that. And if you're broke, you're going to come across very urgent, but it doesn't necessarily mean you can fit that level. Like if you're not great at building relationships, I mean, a relationship driven sale that requires a multi-call process is going to be a struggle for you.
Yep.
And I talk with people all the time, and they're like, well, John, I don't really know that I want someone new, right? I want to find someone who's a killer, right? And it's like, are you prepared to poach
Mm.
someone away? Because, if someone is out looking, and, like, and, we need to go get as close to this as possible. What do you think you need?
Yep.
And then we kind of fall into that whole trap of the transactional salesperson, and everyone thinks that they have to build a business to the place to where they have a transactional sales. So that way it does make sense to bring on salespeople. And that's where, if there's room, I try to educate them that there's different levels of this and stuff like that. But that happens all the time, right? And it's so funny because people who have never done it, right? And I'm like, hey, what happens if they've had a great track record of success, but they don't replicate that here? Doesn't matter. Sales is sales, right? But then after anyone has gone through that experience, they just nod sagely like you are right now, right? Like it's such
So
like a
good.
thing of like, oh, like why did I think that was going to work kind of mode.
Yeah.
So, um, now one of the things that I think is very interesting, right, is the overlap between sales and marketing, right? But then also how different it is, right?
Mm.
And I used to do a morning show with a friend of mine, and he comes from marketing and I came from sales. Now, we used to sell together a long time ago back in the same bank and finance together.
Oh, wow.
And we kind of just split on different paths and everything. And so, uh, there's a profound difference in the skill set between these two things, right? So I'm curious, with bringing on Kyle, right, and bringing on structure and really kind of cleaning things up, what are the biggest changes of perspective or thinking about how you view sales or how you show up on your calls, or where have you changed the most?
Yeah, I think one, just internally, it's been a process, but getting time in with Kyle has really helped me realize, like, for us to go where we want to go as a company, like, I need more types of Kyles who are self-sufficient and can um, have their own vision within what we want to do, and like be able
Mm,
to do
the
that. And so,
intrapreneur, if you will.
yeah, exactly. And we've been really lucky on our sales team. Actually, we have two full-time salespeople out part to full-time, and they've both owned businesses before, so they understand what it's like to who they're talking to avatar wise. So
Hmm.
when we can, I try to find someone on the sales team who, for our next hire, I'll try to find someone who's run a business before. Doesn't have to be the case, but they can speak to it, right? They know the pain, they know the frustration of
Yeah.
like sitting there. And so, and it's actually helped our marketing be able to say, hey, you're going to meet with a former or a fellow business owner who's owned a business before, who's faced these challenges. One of our closers actually is a former student of the program. So she actually went through our program, loved it so much. She has an
Yeah.
ecom business, and is seasonal. So when it's not busy time, she's working with us, and she can literally talk about the program. She can talk about what it's like to go through it. Kyle's actually gone through it as well, and so it's really helped marketing on that front to be able to go and speak to, hey, we get it. Our company gets it. We've been business owners. We understand that versus, hey, we're accountants and bookkeepers. We're the financial
Yeah.
folks. So it I won't say it was like deliberate, but it was somewhat thought through and strategic of like, hey, if we can find people who actually have owned businesses before, that'll make
Hmm.
marketing even more appealing of like who people will meet with and who they'll be guided by. All of our coaches in the beginning had previously owned businesses. And so yeah, I might have missed the original point of the question, so I feel bad there, John.
Well,
But
I mean, there's a lot to this, right? There's a lane of product knowledge, right? In knowing your product inside and out, and having trust and confidence in that. But then the part that I think is like slipping away, right, is just business acumen, right? Business perspectives, right? Because if you had like, no judgment here or anything, but if you had a developmental kind of pipeline program or whatever that was showing them the business acumen or whatever, then you wouldn't necessarily need people that had ran
Yeah.
businesses in the past and stuff. But a lot of people are just like, well, if we just fill them with product knowledge and features and benefits, then it'll be fine. Or they go the other way and they're like, well, we're not going to teach our setters anything about the product. So that way they can't answer any questions because your job is to just to press for an appointment and everything else like that. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like the perspectives are multivariate. And the other part that is so infuriating at times is that like nothing never works. Right. Like, I mean, if you do enough volume, you can find a way and a path forward and stuff like that. But it's like, is this the right path? Right. Is there more
Yeah.
friction here than there needs to be and stuff? And so, it's tough, right? Like
Yeah.
I love this thing that I get to do, but it's also filled with like a lot of blind spots and dissonance and, like old hard values and thinking and stuff like that. So it's also gotta put it down if you're not open to the ideas, so
Yeah.
that way I can go find people that are.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. To your point,
um,
I was just going to say there, John, of,
please.
yeah, it's been interesting. So we just, pulling back the curtain, like we had hired two, appointment setters this year.
Mm,
And so we were going to go from the two call process I had been setting for the most part. And then, Kyle started doing self setting. That was going really well. And then our other closer was, still doing more of a one call close process. Get into nuances, but, we originally had started on a one call process and then we moved to a two call process. It
mhm,
was always two calls because we always had follow-ups, so it was really just
yeah,
a one call that was really a two call process. But what was interesting is, so we brought on two appointment setters, to your point with this, who had not run businesses before, never really been a part of businesses before. And we did find it really challenging to try to level them up fast enough on a business acumen knowledge to
yeah.
be able to get into discovery deeper. They could follow the script, they could ask things, but if as soon as things got a little bit off that, it was really hard
Oh
to go
yeah.
into. And it makes sense. It's a little bit more
It's a
it's
higher
a
level thing, right?
yeah.
It's
And
not
so
it's not
to your
just like
point,
sell them the phone,
that has
kind of
shifted
thing.
our process now to, instead of an appointment setter closer, that our closer will now do the two call process. So when we're filtering now for, it's not a belief that I think that there's no appointment setters out there who couldn't do this, but we've just found that if we can go slower and they can control the set and they also have the business acumen. So it's just shifted
Yeah.
how we hire. So rather than doing, because we tried the internal training route to a degree.
Yeah.
One, all of our closers go through the program. So they go through as a
Good. Yeah.
student,
That's
so they get
important.
to live it, they get to feel it. But we weren't doing that with the appointment setter side. And part of that was just like there was no business acumen at all, that we were like, man, it's going to take a long
Yeah.
time to explain some of this. And so just as you were saying that, I was like, yeah, it's really made me think of like, yeah, we've really had to be sort of strategic of the type of hire we make there.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
totally somebody else could be like, no, you should definitely do it this way. It's just been the way that we've found to work for us.
oh, for sure. Right. Like,
Yeah.
if I think I think there's a lot of bad hacks when it comes to like hiring and trying to scale sales. Like the two that I run into the most is like, well, we're just going to go try to find someone on commission only, but you want to make them try to do outbound and they're just not going to. They're going to go find something else to do. And then the other one that I run into is like, well, we want to go find someone who's already been in the industry and has a Rolodex. And it's like that person's going to run through that Rolodex and then they're not going to do anything else, right? Because that's their asset, kind of thing. Um, and now what is cool about this is like I think you found a good shortcut, right? Because if you've ran a business before to any level or extreme, right, you should have a little bit of business acumen or at least empathy and some understanding of like, hey, it's tough, right? It's a much wider lane, and
Or
people
if you've been
think
a
that's why this
manager
show.
or a director level person, you're usually responsible for the
Hundred
KPIs and
percent,
metrics kind of side. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, right. But no, like I mean, having internal training and having internal development is expensive. It's a lot of build out. It's easy to miss really big, and it's there's reasons why people hire 30 to keep two, right? I mean, they don't have a better way of cracking the nut, which is kind of unfortunate for the other 28 people
Yeah.
that are just kind of drowning. But it's been a play. It's been a thing that worked, more often than it didn't. Um, Changing topics just a little bit, right? One of the things we were kind of talking about is you said that don't be afraid to be the least knowledgeable person in the room. That's not how you said it, but you were kind of talking about this idea that like one of the things you've gotten better at is like knowing where you don't know enough, right? And I'm curious, right? Because if you're going to go out as a founder, you have to have a little bit of moxie, right? A little bit of drive, a little bit of ambition. So I'm curious, how do you get better at knowing, like, that's not my lane. I'm not I don't need to be the smartest person in the room. If I am the smartest person in the room, that's probably problematic. How do you get better at that?
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's probably a couple layers to that, which is like one, being self-aware enough to know that you're not the smartest. So like sometimes I run into people and they just, you know, uh, sort of lack self-awareness there. And by no means am I some self-awareness expert by any means, but yeah, just like having the honesty to go, yeah, clearly I'm not the brightest person at this. Or sometimes it's just like, I haven't spent as much time as other people on this. So it's not a like, I think that's part of it, is just letting go of like, having natural talent for something versus like respecting the work and time someone's put in to something
Mm,
and going, hey,
that's
like
fair.
you, cause I think so much of like, it's interesting. Like I just think as competitors, we get into fixed mindset of either I'm like naturally good at
Mm,
something or I'm not good at something. And it's like John kicked my butt in sales, but he's also spent 20, 10, 15, 20 years more of practicing his craft than I have. So, then the question becomes, do I want to spend 10, 15, 20 years to try to get there? Or even if I train with John in this case, like as an owner, it's like, oh, maybe it gets me there in a year or two. Like, do I want to wait that long based on the runway we have? And like,
yeah.
should I look for someone who is smarter than me at this already? And so I think part of it's just coming down to like, being for me, it's like curious. I don't know about you, but like I just like to learn, and I tend to learn from people who are smarter or have more experience or more knowledge in something than I do. And
Uh-huh.
so, like I really enjoy learning. I enjoy being curious about things, and so it's kind of, I don't say frustrating. It's frustrating, and kind of boring, honestly. If like everyone just looks at you and you have all the answers, and you're like, I mean, there's an ego fill at times where you're like, yeah, I'm needed, right? Like, but there's other
Uh-huh.
ways to be needed, I think, besides just like
Oh, yeah.
being the answer guy, right? Like, how can I support you? What can I do? Like, I have connection. Can I connect you with someone? And so, and I know what we're talking about is nothing new. Like, you are the five people you surround yourself with kind of
Yep.
thinking. And, but yeah, it's something that I think um, just trying to reframe it, like you talk about in sales, reframing things, right? Rather than like, oh my gosh, I don't know enough. It's like, how cool do I get to sit with somebody who knows so much more than me? Like, what
Yeah.
can I learn from you? What do you think? So it's been so fun with our team of hiring people who, in my mind, are so much more knowledgeable at whatever their skill set is, and being like, well, what do you think? Like, what would you do if we had a blank slate? What would you want to do? I want to do this. Okay, let's do it.
Epic.
Or like, hey, I would love to do that. X thing might cost 10 times out of our budget. What could we do at a micro scale of that? Like, okay, let me put some guardrails on what we could do budget wise. What would you do with this? Oh, I'd want to do that.
Mhm.
It's like, wow, I never would have thought of that. Maybe ChatGPT would have got lucky and told me the same thing, but I doubt it. It's like, but I have you and I trust you. And it's like, yeah, ChatGPT might give me 10 ideas, but you're like, yeah, I've literally lived all 10 ideas, and I can tell you the one or two that actually seem to work well in
Yeah.
practice. It's like,
Lived
thank you. Let's go
experience.
that route. Yeah.
Yeah. Shifting gears a little bit, Will, because I want to respect your time and, we both
Yeah.
have other things to go do today. We're going to go into the rapid fire question. And I, planted these seeds whenever we talked before, right? So, and on this first one, I'm going to open it up just a little bit, right? Because being on the marketing side, but also being in a finance company, right? When you think about founders and people going out on their own, what do they need to know about finance and or marketing so that way they can avoid some of those pitfalls, avoid some of those, false paths and stuff like that?
Yeah. I think number one is you got to invest in learning at least the minimum of each. So, in my experience as an owner or founder, of getting into understanding the marketing, getting into understanding the financing. So, I have no desire to be a bookkeeper or accountant ever, but I need to understand bookkeeping and accounting. It's a scorecard of my company. Of like, if
Mm,
someone were to say, hey, I want to buy your business, that's what they're going to ask for, is my books. If I don't understand them, I don't understand what it means. I'm at the mercy of someone else telling me what it means. And same with marketing. Rather than going and hiring an agency right away, there's nothing wrong with it. But like, can you at least dabble in it so you understand what expectations to set? Of like,
mm,
hey, I want to spend money on this. What are realistic expectations? I was talking with a lady, one of our clients, who's like, I'm on my seventh marketer in 2 years. And you're like, whew, man, like, makes you kind of wonder, like, where's it going wrong here? Is it all the
Yeah.
marketers or 7 marketers wrong? And she was honest about it. She goes, I just don't think I've understood what expectations I should set. And I was like, hey, before we hire 8, let's learn, right? And she's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's probably a good idea. And so, long-winded answer of like, uh, I, it's easy to blame others when you don't know what expectations should be set on your
Oh,
own side, right? And like, so that just like in sales where it's like, I expect you to close at 40%. It's like, well, have you been in there for a year closing at 40%? No. It's like, do you think I'm like a
yeah.
wizard? It's like, I hope you are, but yeah, it's one of those where it's like, dude, live it a little bit. Obviously there's certain things like, you know, that other people are going to be better at, but like just live it a bit so you can set realistic expectations for yourself and for a team.
And the other side of that I think we're kind of touching on, but I hope that people hear is like you won't get sold nearly as off base if you have a little bit of working knowledge, right? But if you don't have any working knowledge, right, you get that cold email, you get that cold DM, and it's like we're going to 10x your business through finance and accounting. And because you don't know enough, you don't know what's within the realm of within reason or what's, BS just for marketing attempts and trying to set meetings and stuff like that. And so what happens is those people, because they don't want to lean in and appreciate that there's some craft and some thinking and strategy to this thing, they put themselves into this place of being the biggest marks on the planet, unfortunately, right? And then when it doesn't go according to plan, because most things don't, there's frustration and everyone is just mad at each other, and it's like it's fascinating to me just how wild it can get in the realm of like promises made via outreach and different things and the stuff that people fall for, right? And
Yeah.
honestly, I got to put myself in there because I've made some bad hires. I've paid for some courses. I brought on a consultant that was supposed to help me and didn't, and it was a money back guarantee, but then that didn't pan out either. So like it's like I don't know a single person that hasn't happened to, if I'm being really honest about it.
Yeah.
But when you don't know enough, there's hope, right? I
Yeah.
hope that this thing can come out in
Or
the right
or the
way.
opposite of fear. Like I just think about, and I'm sure they've all had great intentions, but like I'm sure I've spent way more money on fixing car parts that I didn't even know existed because someone sat down and goes, "Hey, your cadaver is broken." I'm like, that sounds bad. Yeah, we should fix that. And they could have made up a term. I don't even know what it like. I know nothing about the
Yeah.
inside of my car where I'm just like, cool. Yeah, it sounds you know more and it sounds important. Let's do it. And they're like, turn a knob this far, and they're like, yep, nice.
Yep, there
I
it
don't
is
know.
there.
Like, yeah.
Thank you for that. That's a great answer. And I think that alone will help some people like stop dabbling, invest yourself a little bit so that way you can make smarter decisions and at least express your own expectations, right? Especially growth side, right? Sales and marketing side. Like if you don't know what you're asking for, you're probably not going to get it, you know? Next question. And when you're thinking about all the advice, all the mantras, right? Like we're friends on Facebook. That's how we originally connected and everything. And it's filled with everyone regurgitating advice and mantras and dogma and everything. I'm curious, is there a piece of advice that you now appreciate because you've learned the lesson that you didn't really think was real or valid before you kind of had to learn it the hard way?
Man, there's so many. The one that comes to mind is like hire slow, fire fast.
Mm,
And it's one that just it's so painful because I think if you're someone who like is invested in people and you care about people, even if all the data is there and it's like, hey, this isn't a fit, you're still like part of, at least for me, cling on to like, but maybe it could work. Where can we find the
yep.
ways that this would work? And your gut is telling you like, this just isn't it. Like this isn't the one, and you know it. And even if you don't have the data and your gut knows, it's like I I've
Yeah.
heard that one so many times, and I'm like, yeah, maybe there's a different way, and I'm sure there are, but I've just spent so many agonizing nights of sweating and worrying and knowing I have to have a tough conversation that
Oof.
went on I let it go way too long. And for their sake, to put them like, I look at one of the first sales hire, I think he's in a role right now where he's super happy. It fits exactly what he needed. And I'm like, man, I
Yeah. Good for
dragged
him.
you on for a year longer trying to make this work than like I could have set you free to find that opportunity. And so that one for sure has stuck out beyond all others.
That is, I love that, right? Because one of the things, I have to talk about this differently sometimes with like salespeople, but it's like if there's a crack in the facade, right, and you're more focused on the crack than you are on the facade, it's time to go, right?
Mm.
And so for like, I'll talk with founders, right, or leaders, and I'm like, so like, tell me about your sales team, and they'll literally tell me, Will, like, oh, they're all garbage. Okay, why are you still paying them, right? You don't trust them. You're not bought into their efforts and actions. Like, why are they still here? And it's, hearing that from your perspective, it's the same thing, right? If you have put someone into a bucket of, they're just not it, you're gonna be looking over your shoulder and over their shoulder more than you would be just like focused on the work you need to be doing because trust has been fractured, right? In
Yeah.
a very meaningful way. So, oh, great one.
Yeah.
Now, you've been in the space for a while and you ran a couple of businesses, and obviously we're in the age of AI and things are crazy and different and new. And, everyone wants to reinvent the entire business scene every, 6 months to a year is what it feels like. If you were talking to someone who's starting today with everything and seeing how things have changed, what is your most important piece of advice or word of warning?
Yeah, I love this one from I can't remember who originally said something like this, but if you're getting into a business and you want it to be about providing financial stability for you, don't worry about what you're passionate about. Just solve the problems of the people you're talking to. And so I just
Oh,
find so often, and this we've just organically, I think, not coming from a business background, we've just always launched based off getting feedback first. So, hey, can we sit down? What do you need? Okay. Do a lot of people need that same thing? They do. Okay. What are you trying so far? We're trying this. Okay. Sort of like a sales conversation, but then creating a product or service based off of that has been so much more helpful for us than like saying we're just going to start a bookkeeping company and try to compete on bookkeeping. It's like, well, what's
yeah.
different? Like, what are people willing to pay for? I'm not saying don't like that. That's a bad idea. I just would say that if starting over with so many things changing fast is who do you want to help? Like, what kind of type of person do you want to
Mm,
help? And then go ask and do surveys. One of my favorite marketer guys, Jeff Miller, he used to run survey ads. Blew my mind. He would spend money to just say, hey, if you fill this out, we'll give you a free ebook or something. And people would just answer a survey on their pain points. That was it. He would just run it. He would spend money just to collect data on their pain points. And I
wild.
was like, whoa, like, you're not doing this to get clients? He's like, no, I'm just learning about my potential clients and what they need. And so he would do a survey, and then he would take all that data and then go make an offer to all of those people based on the problems they were facing, create a solution for what they were saying their problems were. And I was like, man, that's so smart. So because he was like, I never run an offer until I know I've at least like surveyed
Yeah.
50 or 100 people of what their exact needs are. And then I go and test the new offer. And I was like, duh, that makes so much sense. So that's what I would say starting out is, if it's just about passion, you want to do passion, then just plan to go slower, usually be my advice. Save some
Yeah.
money.
The, I love, man, there's so much in that because I get to do a thing I'm very passionate about, right? And like, for me, I need the passion, right? If I don't really feel like I'm helping, I don't think I would do the amount of effort that I have done, right, into my business, right? But that's for me. And for some people, I've done a lot of other work about disconnecting and, and I didn't start this way, but now, okay, what is the problem in your perspective? What do you want to kind of fix? So I take that kind of very discovery driven kind of process and stuff like that, because otherwise we're just like alone in a tower thinking that we're smarter than everybody else that we're trying to help. And no one likes feeling that energy, right, in a sales process or in a sales call or on a checkout page, no matter how you're doing it. And so that's something I tell everybody now, right? Like, and I love this other thing that you said, go find the people that you want to help, right? Because like one of the things that I ask people to do is like, okay, if you're going to spend 8 hours in front of people, talking to them, hearing their concerns, trying to help them, what do those people look like?
Mm,
Right? Because everybody's like, okay, John, what do you think is ripe for disruption? Or where do you think it'll be an easy win? And it's like, if you don't have like an ounce of care, this is going to be so much harder,
yeah.
right? And so I'll send people off, right? They're like, John, I want to start a business. I'm like, great. Here's the protocol, 15 by 50, right? We've actually written about it and talked about it and everything. And it's like, okay, this is it. And it's like, look, if you don't want to have to become like a sales machine, go build something that people are actually asking for,
Yeah.
right? So like get out of the way, put down your ego and go learn from the people that you want to help, right? And the cool thing about the protocol, right, is I talk with a lot of people who have desire and they have grit, but they've not really channeled that into action, right?
Mm.
So it's still very much in like the nice to have versus like, no, I need to go figure this thing out.
Yeah.
And so it's like if you can't make 50 asks to try to get 15 meetings within a group of people that you're excited to, you're not that excited to help them. Let's just be honest about it. This ain't it, you know? I love that. I
Yeah.
like, woof, thank you, man. That's very,
Yeah.
very cool. I appreciate that insight. If people want to come learn more about you and your company and come hang out with you and check out what you're working on and stuff, where should they come look you up?
Yeah, absolutely. Probably the best place is you can check us out on our website, just ceofinanceacademy.com, or you can connect with me on Facebook or LinkedIn, just Will Boyd, or it might be William Boyd. Mine will say like fractional CFO or something. And so I'm that one, and feel free to reach out. I try to make um, content somewhat frequently. So, but yeah, if that's it, feel free to check us out on our website if you want to learn more about that. Otherwise, feel free to just shoot me a DM on LinkedIn or Facebook.
Awesome. Will, thank you so much for coming on here and being so open and transparent about your path and what you've learned on the way. I do think that this is going to help a lot of people and just very cool that you're willing to do it. I really appreciate it.
Dude, thank you so much for having me, John. And it's an honor and a pleasure. And just really respect what you're doing. So I feel humbled to
Thank
be a
you.
part of it. Yeah,
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
you too.